So the entirety of the final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars has been released in its entirety. And I'd be lying to you if I said I didn't feel a little weird right now. This show has honestly been such a huge part of my life. I used to sit down with my dad and my little brother, and every weekend when the show aired, we'd watch the latest episode. Those nights are nights that I'm gonna remember forever, because truthfully, those were some of the best nights of my entire life. So you can imagine my sheer shock, horror, and disappointment when I found out that the show was cancelled. Man, that was a dark day. Then 6 years later, it comes back with a 7th season to give the show the proper conclusion it deserves. Now that the show has officially come to an end, I can say that I was left with a feeling of satisfaction for the ending. There are a grand total of 12 episodes and 3 story arcs in this season, so instead of reviewing the season as a whole, I'm gonna review and grade each arc individually and then give my overall consensus and grade the season as a whole. Before I properly begin though, let me give you a quick summary of my feelings on the show as a whole. I actually like Anakin in this show. Obi-Wan is a cocky badass. Ahsoka is amazeballs. The clones are beautiful badasses. Oh my days, the animation! Why are the episodes out of order? The action is awesome! Darth Maul! Okay, let's do this. I will say this about the whole of Season 7 in general, the animation is the best it's ever been. The animation has gotten better with every passing season, but this season is a clear winner in terms of animation. Everything looks more detailed, the movement of the characters is more fluent and lifelike, and overall the episodes of this season just look beautiful. There is not a single bad thing I can say about the animation. It's come a heck of a long way since the terrible movie that introduced us to these characters and the lackluster first season, but the journey has been worth it, especially in the animation department. Okay, onto the arcs. This here's the Bad Batch. God, I can't do impressions to save my life. So the first 4 episodes of the season are focused on the Bad Batch, a group of genetically enhanced clones who are shoot first, ask question later type dudes, who want to jump straight into Clanker territory, smash droids, blow shit up, and overall just wreak absolute havoc. These dudes team up with Captain Rex and Anakin Skywalker as they go on a mission to retrieve Echo, a clone trooper who was believed to be dead for quite some time. This arc was a really fun way of kicking off the final season. The Bad Batch arc was really entertaining and honestly a blast to watch. However, the thing that really drives this story arc forward is the clones and the fact that they're not going to give up on their brother. The back and forth between the Bad Batch and the regular clones, or regs as they're called, is also a major highlight. A lot of conflict is created between the Bad Batch and the so-called regs due to their differences, as well as their conflicting viewpoints on the mission itself. I really enjoyed seeing these characters butt heads over their differences, as well as what the right thing to do is in terms of the mission, because it not only makes for some really entertaining interactions, but also some great character development. Rex in particular gets a lot of the spotlight in this arc. It was really interesting to see a character who is usually very level-headed and emotionally restrained let his personal feelings drive him, because he, more than any other character in this story, believes that Echo is alive. It was great to see how Rex's desire to save Echo contrasted with the other characters, especially the Bad Batch, who aren't so sure if Echo is truly alive, which creates even more conflict between these characters. But despite the disbelief of the other characters, they do find Echo. He is alive, but he has been through some horrific experimentation and modification. He barely looks human. He's more machine than man, appearance-wise anyway, which brings me to my favorite part of this entire arc, that being Echo himself. I am of the opinion that Echo was done dirty in the Citadel arc, so it was great to see this character return and actually have a proper arc to conclude his story. Echo is a really endearing character because despite all the horrific things that have been done to him, he still retains his humanity, which can be seen in the way that he almost immediately starts cracking jokes and interacting with the other characters like nothing happened. You could view this as rushed character development, but to me, Echo comes across as someone who is just thankful to be alive, and with people he knows, like Rex and even Anakin. He just wants things to be the way they were, but at the same time, you can tell that he knows that things will never be the same again. There's a great scene where Rex tells Echo that hopefully it's gonna be just like old times. But then it cuts to Echo, and as the camera zooms in on Echo and cuts to a close-up of his face, he repeats what Rex said, but he has this sad expression on his face, implying that he knows things will never be the same after this. Seeing Echo having to prove to the other characters that he isn't a separatist spy was really enjoyable, but what I love about this is that Echo isn't really focused on that. You can tell that it's on his mind, because after he does prove himself to the others, he does sarcastically remark, "Was there ever any doubt?" But above all, he's just focused on the mission, not just because he's aiding the Republic, but also as a way of making amends for all the intel the Separatists force out of him, as a way of making things right. I dig pretty much everything they do with this character, and I love that the arc ends with the Bad Batch after spending the entirety of the final episode doubting his allegiance agents asking him to join them because, like them, his path is different, because it brings this arc full circle in a way that's emotionally resonant as well as applying itself to the overall message of this arc, that being to be accepting of the differences in one another. Speaking of the Bad Batch, I really enjoy these characters. Each one of them has things that set them apart from one another in terms of skills, abilities, appearances, and even personality traits. All of them are really likable and very funny, especially Wrecker in that regard. These guys just love wreaking havoc. They love fighting so much that they even have a friendly competition with each other to see who can kill the most droids. I also love the way that the Bad Batches shoot first, ask questions later approach to battle contrasts with the regular clones' more strategy-based approach. The action sequences in this arc are all very entertaining and very creative. Namely, an action sequence where the Bad Batch use a gunship door as a shield as they run at an army of battle droids and throw stun grenades into the air and shoot them mid-air. I also love that a lot of the action is shot in these really long unbroken tracking shots and makes the action really immersive as well as letting you see everything. Unfortunately, as great as the action is, there is so much action in this arc that it does undermine the overall story, and as a result, I wasn't as invested in the story as I would have liked to have been. The story doesn't really get much time to breathe or flesh itself out, and I do think it's because of the overemphasis on action that a lot of potentially crucial character moments and segments of the story feel rushed or just straight up ignored. I really wish there was a scene where Rex, for example, tells Echo about the death of Fives, because Fives and Echo were unbelievably close, and I just wish there was a moment where Echo found out about this and came to the realization that he's the last of Domino Squad, and that all the brothers he grew up with and trained with are gone. It would have been such a powerful moment. There's also scenes where the characters will be in deep shit, they're surrounded by droids, and it looks like there's no hope. And then all of a sudden, Tech or one of the other characters will be like, "Wait! I recorded the distress calls of these flying thingies because it's my hobby. If I play this, these wild, untamed creatures will come and save us and even let us ride on their backs for almost no reason. It is a miracle. Yay us!" Stuff like that where a character will just have a solution to a problem instantly without any prior setup just felt so out of nowhere and convenient, and it just takes away from the stakes. That does happen more than once in this arc, and once you notice it, it's really hard to unsee it. It also doesn't help that the battle droids literally can't shoot for shit. They're genuinely worse than stormtroopers. I did enjoy this arc. I really enjoyed the characters. Echo's return was great. It's really funny. There's a great scene where Rex is distracting Obi-Wan so Anakin can talk to Padme, which is hilarious because Rex trying to stall for time was comedy gold. But I also love that Rex just knows about Anakin and Padme now, or at least he knows something is going on. That's just really funny to me, and it's weirdly compelling. Yes, the arc is hindered by an overabundance of admittedly great action and a lack of stakes, and I really wouldn't put this anywhere near my top 10 favorite Clone Wars arcs, but I will say that it was a good, fun, and enjoyable way of kicking off Clone Wars Season 7, even if it wasn't a great one. The Bad Batch arc gets a 7.3 out of 10. Okay, let's talk about the bad one. It's the Martez Sisters arc. The second 4 episodes focus on Ahsoka, who is my favorite character in this entire series. After she leaves the Jedi Order, she crash lands in a mechanic's workshop where she meets the sisters. She meets the sisters who are trying to scheme their way into delivering some spice, which they can make a lot of money from delivering said spice to some very powerful people. As expected, I loved seeing Ahsoka again. She was almost completely absent from season 6, so it was good to see her finally return to the show. And I also really enjoyed the back and forth between Ahsoka and the sisters. These sisters are trying to play different people in the galaxy for money, and Ahsoka, knowing a lot of these people and their reputations, is like, no, don't do that. That's a really bad idea. Don't do that! But obviously they don't believe her, and as a result they end up in some pretty deep shit with the Pike Syndicate, and Ahsoka now has to help them get out of this shit. There's also a really interesting subplot where Ahsoka is trying to hide the fact that she's a Jedi from the sisters because they hate the Jedi, because the Jedi were indirectly responsible for the death of their parents. That was actually really interesting, and it made for some great sequences where one of the sisters will be about to fall to their death, and Ahsoka will subtly use the Force to save them, and that was pretty cool. There's also a devil and angel act going on with one of the characters, Trace. You've got her sister Rafa, who is almost manipulating her into these illegal activities so she can get the two of them some money, and then you've got Ahsoka, who is trying to get Trace to do the right thing for the good of others rather than themselves. Those dynamics were actually kind of interesting, but other than that, these episodes are so boring. The pacing of these episodes is unbearably slow, and it's because this arc is 4 episodes long. This entire story, realistically, can be told in 2 episodes, but because the arc is dragged on for 4 freaking episodes, it drags on for so freaking long. It is so apparent through this entire storyline that it didn't need to be 4 episodes long. I mean, the 3rd episode of this arc feels entirely pointless considering the characters break out of prison, they wander around in a city for a little bit, and then they get caught again, thrown in prison again, and then the episode ends! What was even the point of that? This episode is completely useless. At first, it didn't really feel like filler to me because at least we were seeing what Ahsoka's life has been like since she left the Jedi Order, and through meeting the sisters, she does learn more about that viewpoint that some people have, that being that the Jedi aren't these great heroes, but nothing else really comes into play. So for the rest of the arc, I was legitimately thinking to myself, why do I even need to watch these episodes? Every time I've rewatched this season, I felt the need to skip these episodes. Heck, I only rewatched them recently so I could do this review. There's also setup for the Siege of Mandalore in this episode because it's revealed that Bo-Katan and the Mandalorians are on the same planet, just observing them, I guess. I didn't really know what to think about this because on one hand, I like Mandalorians. It was cool to see them again, just lurking in the shadows, but at the same time, it feels detached from the rest of this arc, like it was a last-minute addition that the creators added in to make these episodes somewhat worth watching. Spoiler alert, it didn't work! Okay, I'm done complaining about this arc. 3 out of 10. It sucks. The Siege of Mandalore arc. The Siege of Mandalore is the best 4 episodes of the Clone Wars we've ever had. Need I say more? The last 4 episodes of the season are not just the best episodes of the Clone Wars we've ever had, they're some of the best Star Wars I've seen in years. They saved the entire season. While I do like one of the 2 arcs that preceded this one, this is what we've really been waiting for, and oh my days, was it worth it! I think we can all agree that the main characters of this arc are Ahsoka, Rex, and Maul. Obi-Wan and Anakin are largely absent from this arc, which makes sense, because I'm fairly certain that during this time, Anakin is murdering children, and then he's murdering separatists, and then after that he tries to murder Obi-Wan, but obviously that doesn't work because, you know, that. I'm glad that Obi-Wan and Anakin aren't in this arc as much as the other characters, as much as I do enjoy their presence in this show, because while they do play a major role in the show as a whole, and they even play a small role in this arc, I always felt that Ahsoka and the clones were the main characters, and having Anakin and Obi-Wan largely absent from this arc does mean that the conclusion to the series feels more personal to Ahsoka, Rex, and even Maul. Not just because it's filling the gap between Clone Wars and Rebels, but also because it gives us a more personal look at the end of the Clone War. Seeing these events from Ahsoka's point of view is riveting, because I actually care about this character for one, and for another, Ahsoka is such a compelling protagonist because of how pure she is. She manages to embody what a Jedi should be, despite technically not being a Jedi at this point. She actually goes out of her way to help people when they're in need, no matter what, which can be seen in the way that she's trying to help Bo-Katan take Mandalore back from Maul, and even in the way that she actually wants to help Maul when he proposes to work together in order to take down Darth Sidious. Part of what makes Ahsoka so endearing is the lengths that she's willing to go to maintain who she is. She almost never kills in this arc. There's very few moments where someone loses their life because of her actions. When she's fighting more super commandos on Mandalore, she cuts their guns and jetpacks up, kicks them and uses the Force on them, but she never directly kills them, and even when the clones turn on her, despite them really wanting to kill her, she refuses to kill them, despite Rex even saying that she might want to change her mind on that. That just goes to show how pure she is as a character, but she also proves herself to be really self-sufficient. Seeing her do things like hold her own against Maul or doing everything she can to save Rex during Order 66 is so awesome, and it really does show how far she's come since her introduction in the Clone Wars movie. I loved Rex in this arc. His interactions with Ahsoka, in particular a conversation they have about war and what it means to be a soldier and a Jedi, is particularly heartfelt and very engaging. The friendship between Ahsoka and Rex is the emotional backbone of this arc, and seeing these two interact and joke around in battle was so touching, you know, despite the circumstances. Honestly, one of my favorite moments between these two is when Ahsoka and Anakin walk into the hangar bay of a cruiser to find Rex and the other clones who have painted their helmets to look like Ahsoka as a way of honoring her. That was really emotionally resonant and perfectly conveyed the close relationship between Ahsoka and the clones. Watching these episodes, you know what's going to happen. The moment you realize they're tying it in with Revenge of the Sith, you know it's coming. So when you're watching the first 2 episodes of this arc, you're filled with this absolute absolute sense of dread, and when Order 66 does actually happen, it's heartbreaking. Seeing the clones turn on Ahsoka is honestly one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever seen. The scene where Order 66 actually happens might be my favorite moment in the entire show, because as we know, the clones have these inhibitor chips that make them execute this order without question, and seeing Rex trying so hard to fight this thing and not kill his friend was tear-jerking. And then when the chip inevitably takes him over, he and the other clones start shooting and all hell breaks loose. In a matter of seconds, Ahsoka's life is turned upside down as the soldiers she's fought with all her life, her friends, suddenly turn on her. I know I've used this phrase a few times already, but heartbreaking is the best way I can describe it. You're watching these clones who have painted their helmets to look like Ahsoka trying to kill her, and it's tragic. The tragic element to Order 66 is also why it was so exciting and in a way relieving when Ahsoka and the droids actually managed to get the inhibitor chip out of Rex and bring him back to normal. That was really interesting because you actually get to see Order 66 from the perspective of a clone who was taken over and is now like, this is wrong, I'm gonna fight against this. At the same time though, it adds to the tragedy of this story because Rex has to fight against his own brothers in order to save Ahsoka. He's willing to kill them to save her. Hell, he even does kill a few clones, but he doesn't really want to do it, which can be seen by the fact that he cries when trying to tell Ahsoka that the clones are willing to die and take him and her with them. This whole arc is just tragic. I would even go as far as to describe this story as a tragedy because Ahsoka is reunited with Anakin, Rex, and people that she really cares about. She goes with the clones who respect and are loyal to her to liberate Mandalore, which they do successfully, only for Order 66 to be executed, with the clones then trying to kill her. The scene where Rex and Ahsoka bury all the clones after the Venator crashes was visually stunning as well as extremely sad. The clone burial ground is a visually striking image that conveys the idea that the clones just weren't themselves. They were acting under the influence of these chips, and it's because of that Ahsoka still views them as good soldiers, which is why I think she and Rex give them a proper burial. But the scene in general, with the camera panning across the graves, ending with Ahsoka dropping her lightsaber, symbolizing her leaving her past behind in order to go into hiding, actually made me tear up, and I did cry at multiple points during the last 2 episodes of this arc. Let's talk about Maul for a second because he was a major highlight in these episodes. It was surprising but weirdly intriguing to see this character actually in a state of panic and dread because he knows that something is about to happen. He knows everything is about to change and that Darth Sidious is behind all of it. Him revealing everything he knows about Sidious and Anakin being groomed into becoming Sidious's new apprentice was an unexpected but welcome surprise, and it really upped the dread for Order 66 as well as added to the emotional weight of his fight with Ahsoka. Maul is a ferocious beast in these episodes. He is like a freaking unstoppable tank. The most memorable sequence including Maul, other than a lightsaber fight, which I'll talk about in a sec, is this amazing sequence in a hallway, which weirdly doesn't include his trademark lightsaber, where the clones are helplessly trying to gun down Maul, and Maul is just using the Force to tear ass through these clones. He throws them across the room, up on the roof, he rips the walls apart to crush them, and then uses them as shields, which are quickly converted into clone decapitation tools. It's freaking awesome, and very reminiscent of the Vader hallway scene in Rogue One. This season, as well as the show in general, is pretty violent at times. Yeah, it does cut away before a head or an arm is cut off, for example, and sometimes a death will happen off screen, but they do a pretty good job at conveying the idea that this is a war, and I would actually say the same about the other 2 arcs. The action in these last 4 episodes is nothing short of spectacular. That's some of my favorite action sequences in the whole show. There's that amazing sequence when they first get to Mandalore with Ahsoka jumping from ship to ship, fighting Mandalorians and just kicking ass. And of course, there's the Ahsoka versus Maul lightsaber fight. This fight is awesome. If you've seen my top 11 best lightsaber fights video, you know this is one of my favorites. It's filled to the brim with tension and emotional weight, and the choreography of this fight is phenomenal. They actually got Ray Park to come back and do the mocap for Maul in this fight, so Maul has the speed, he does moves, and fights like the Maul we all know and love. And Ahsoka's choreography was performed by Lauren Mary Kim, who did the fight scenes for the Armorer in The Mandalorian. Dave Filoni and his team did a fantastic job weaving Revenge of the Sith into the narrative and connecting it to this story. There's the amazing opening sequence to this arc, which takes place a day, possibly even hours before Revenge of the Sith, and obviously that's That's followed up by Obi-Wan coming to tell everyone that General Grievous has attacked Coruscant, which is pretty much the opening of Revenge of the Sith, and then later you see Obi-Wan again coming to tell everyone that Anakin killed Count Dooku. There's even a scene where Mace Windu, Yoda, and the other Jedi are talking about the plot to destroy the Jedi, and that's straight out of Revenge of the Sith. And where that scene ended in the movie, here it continues into Clone Wars, and it picks up with Ahsoka coming into the room, so you begin to understand where these characters were when certain things were happening in Revenge of the Sith. The music in the Clone Wars, as well as in the other animated shows, has always been an issue for me. It always felt like low-budget versions of John Williams' themes, or tracks that were heavily inspired by his themes, but they never had their own originality to them. That changed this season. Kevin Kiner's music for this season is excellent. It basically does what Ludwig Göransson's score for The Mandalorian does. It's an original score that sounds new and different while still retaining the key elements that make Star Wars music, Star Wars music. The music, particularly in these last episodes, feels like a perfect hybrid of Star Wars and Blade Runner music. The true ending is just, yep, I'm gonna say it again, heartbreaking. Seeing Darth Vader, who looks amazing, find Ahsoka's lightsaber, to me that was Vader realizing that he's lost everything, and now everything he ever knew and loved is just gone. The transition from the end of the Clone War to the reign of the Galactic Empire, where you see all the stormtroopers, was perfect. It was the perfect way to end this show. The final shot alone is just beautiful. The shot of the old clone trooper helmet with the reflection of Vader slowly fading as he walks away, symbolizing Vader leaving his past and everything he ever was or cared about behind, is amazing. I don't have a single issue with the last 4 episodes of this show. To me, they are the perfect conclusion to the show, and if I'm honest, they're my favorite episodes of Clone Wars. These last 4 episodes are so much better than the previous 8 episodes that I'm almost confused as to why they even included them. It actually feels like they were trying to separate the Siege of Mandalore from the other 2 arcs. I mean, for one, the final 4 episodes are longer, the titles are different, and Clone Wars appears as red, and there's even Lucasfilm production title cards. It feels like Dave Filoni and co are saying, this is what we really wanted to make. So why did you even include the previous 8 episodes? These last 4 episodes on their own would have been just fine. But still, The Siege of Mandalore is a perfect ending to this show. It's some of the best Star Wars I've seen in years, which is why I have absolutely no problem giving The Siege of Mandalore a 10 out of freaking 10. Overall, I did enjoy this season, although to be completely honest, it is kind of underwhelming. The first arc is fun, but the story is undermined by the overuse of action, and the following arc is just so boring. The only arc that really blew me away and kept me on the edge of my seat pretty much the entire time was The Siege of Mandalore. The other 2 arcs just don't compare in terms of my overall enjoyment, but I like this season more than I dislike it. It has a good but not great beginning, a boring middle section, and a pitch-perfect conclusion. I wish this season was great all across the board, but honestly, the final 4 episodes were completely worth it, even if the previous 8 episodes pale in comparison. Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7, as a whole, gets an 8 out of 10. So that was my review of Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much as always for watching. But before I go, I would just like to ask you guys, what did you think of Star Wars The Clone Wars Season 7? Did you think it was good? Did you think it was bad? Did you think it was somewhere in the middle? Please leave your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will indeed see you guys in the next one. Until next time, take care of yourselves, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you, always.